Okay, so food and digestion. Let's do a little review. 4 biomolecules. What are they? Those are the overall umbrella categories. We have the nucleic acids. Then what's next? The proteins, carbohydrates, and the lipids. Those are biomolecules. But we're being a lot more specific. Then we had 7 nutrients. Didn't talk about nucleic acids with respect to nutrients because nucleic acids are DNA and RNA. They're your molecules of genetic information, not much involved with diet. Your body will manufacture what it needs and so forth. But we did talk about proteins, carbs, and lipids. All right, so those are your 3 main classes of foods. So we're going to be a little more specific now with those 3 main classes of foods. Most of what you eat is either a carbohydrate, a dietary lipid, or a protein. The other 2 nutrients that we mentioned, vitamins and minerals, those are consumed in trace amounts. Okay, but they are essential. What does it mean when we're talking about nutrition and we use the term essential? What does it mean? Yes?
It has to be ingested.
Yes, it has to be ingested because the body does not make enough quantities of it or possibly doesn't make it at all. So we're going to talk today about foods and digestion, and we're going to talk a little bit about your digestive system, then a little bit about what happens when you eat. And so we're going to go through the digestive system first, and then we're going to talk about what your body does with carbohydrates, dietary lipids, and proteins. So digestion is a chemical reaction. I've thrown the term around metabolism. Metabolism, what does that mean? That's a very general term. Metabolism could be defined as the sum total of the chemical reactions done by the body to produce energy or needed molecules. So a lot of this does involve your digestive system, but even more important than what we think of as our digestive system is the liver. That's going to be our most important metabolic organ. So the metabolism is defined as the sum total of your body's chemical reactions to produce energy or manufacture needed biomolecules. That is your metabolism. And then we can divide your metabolism into 2 categories. Both of those categories are kind of part of the definition. The first category is catabolic reactions. Now your digestive system is all about chemistry, so it deals with chemical reactions. The first type are catabolic. So we have your metabolism. All the different chemical reactions going on in your body, in your digestive system, in your liver that are going to involve producing energy and producing needed biomolecules. Catabolic is one category. The other is anabolic. Of course, these are opposites. Catabolic reactions break down larger molecules into smaller, usable building blocks. Where do you think this is done? Digestive tract, primarily. Catabolic reactions break down large molecules into smaller, usable building blocks, releasing energy. Most of your catabolic reactions will release energy. So we're breaking down. That's the key. Breaking down. If you want to use chemistry terminology, you would use decomposition. Decomposition. We're breaking down large molecules into smaller, usable building blocks, releasing energy. So let's review. We talked about proteins, We talked about carbs. And we talked about lipids. What are the building blocks of each? Important for you to know this. What are the building blocks of proteins? Remember, proteins are polypeptides, complex molecules that are a sequence of what, Joseph?
Amino acids.
Amino acids. Put it in the right place. So catabolic reactions are eventually going to break down the proteins that you eat into amino acids. And then your liver will take it from there, and it can rearrange amino acids into a different amino acid. It can build proteins and so forth. But that's the anabolic category. We'll get there in a minute. So proteins break down eventually into amino acids. Carbohydrates. Yes? Monosaccharides. In particular, glucose. So there are other two. Remember, glucose is the main energy molecule for each and every cell. Your cells individually have to have glucose to do cellular respiration, to produce energy. So cellular respiration is a catabolic reaction. Remember we had that? The other day we took glucose, C6, H12, O6. In the body we're going to combine it with oxygen. And we're going to yield 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 6 molecules of water. But what are we going to get? We're going to get energy. And that energy is going to be carried by the ATP molecule. Okay? What kind of reaction is that? Catabolic. Do you see what's happening? We're taking a complex molecule, burning it, and we are breaking it down into 2 simpler molecules, aren't we? And we're releasing energy. That is characteristic of catabolic reactions. So proteins are amino acids. Carbohydrates, especially your starches and your more complex carbohydrates, are long chains or polymers of glucose, could be fructose, or maltose. No, galactose. Glucose, fructose, and galactose are your monosaccharides. All right, what is your main dietary lipid? Triglycerides. Triglycerides break down into fatty acids. Don't get these mixed up. Amino acids are proteins. Fatty acids, 3 of them. That's why we have the prefix tri plus a glycerol. So catabolic reactions break down larger molecules into smaller, usable building blocks, releasing energy. Cellular respiration is a catabolic reaction. Of course, this is one of the N reactions because glucose is a building block that is your digestive system will break down your complex carbohydrates. Yes?
So you mean the breakdown of proteins to amino acids produce energy as well?
Yes. But see, well, no. There's a lot, this is just an example of a catabolic reaction. There's a lot of reactions in between here and here. This reaction applies only to carbohydrates. Proteins are not primarily used by the body for energy. The amino acids will be used then in the anabolic reactions, which is the exact opposite of catabolic. Anabolic reactions are defined as reactions that build needed molecules. Okay, so catabolic breakdown, decomposition. Anabolic is the exact opposite. It builds needed molecules. And these usually require energy. It requires energy for your liver to take these smaller molecules, take these building blocks, and assemble them into needed proteins or put them in the blood, and then the cells will use them for energy. So that is anabolic. Exactly the opposite. These are chemical reactions that build needed molecules, often energy requiring, because we're going to take the building blocks and form the needed larger molecules. These are called synthesis reactions. They are the exact opposite. Now, cellular respiration, this is not a single reaction. Remember, we talked about this being a summary formula. There's multiple steps in between here. This is the overall process, not a single chemical reaction. Does anybody know what we call it if we reverse the arrow and go the other way? Yes? Photosynthesis. And that's, of course, done by plant cells only. Photosynthesis is an example of a anabolic reaction, okay? But of course, our cells cannot do photosynthesis, so we have to consume our glucose. All right, that's metabolism. So we're going to talk about how your body processes food. And there's a whole lot more to processing what you eat than just digestion. Digestion is just the beginning. Okay, there's three main things that are going to be going on as far as using your food. Three main metabolic processes involved in eating. Okay, we've got three main metabolic processes involved in eating. The first, and it's just the first, is digestion. The first is digestion. The second is absorption. And the third is transformation. So we're going to do digestion. But then, it doesn't do us any good to just digest nutrients. We have to absorb them. And then transformation. This, of course, is anabolic. This, of course, is catabolic. Okay? So digestion. Digestion, absorption, transformation. Digestion is the breaking down of food substances into nutrients. Breaking down food substances. Primarily, remember we have three main classes of food. Carbohydrates, proteins, and dietary lipids. So the digestion is the breaking down of food substances, carbohydrates, dietary lipids, proteins into nutrients so the body can use them. Absorption is not really a chemical reaction. It's the passing of nutrients into the bloodstream from the intestines, primarily the small intestine. It is the passing of nutrients into the bloodstream from the small intestine. So your digestive system is going to digest, break down your food substances into nutrients. Then your bloodstream, they must be uptaken into or absorbed into the bloodstream. And then last is transformation. Transformation is the synthesis. Remember, we're making bigger molecules. It's the synthesis of needed materials from the absorbed nutrients. Catabolic, breakdown. Anabolic, synthesis. Transformation is the synthesis of needed molecules from the absorbed nutrients. And this is primarily done by the liver. So there are three main metabolic processes involved in eating: digestion, absorption, transformation. So we're going to begin with digestion. Digestion has two main types: mechanical. Let me fix that. And chemical. There's mechanical digestion, and then there's chemical digestion. Mechanical digestion occurs in two places, the mouth and the stomach. Mechanical digestion, of course, involves chewing and mixing. No chemical reaction yet. So mechanical digestion takes place in the mouth and the stomach. It is the breaking down of food into smaller pieces. So it's chewing and mixing, the breaking down of food into smaller pieces, and then mixing it with the digestive enzymes, which brings us to chemical digestion. So mechanical is simply chewing and mixing. No chemistry involved. We're breaking food down into smaller pieces. It's still chemically the same molecules. Then chemical digestion uses enzymes. Uses enzymes to chemically break down molecules into their building blocks. This is chemistry here. This is the actual catabolic chemical reaction, is chemical digestion, the breaking down of food molecules into the smaller molecules, into their building blocks. This requires digestive enzymes, which, by the way, are proteins. So we have digestion, two types, mechanical and chemical. Chemical digestion takes place in the small intestine. A little bit in the stomach, but the stomach is primarily storage and mixing. Most of your chemical digestion takes place in the small intestine. All right, so that's digestion. Then absorption. Absorption requires that your nutrients will be broken down into very small molecules so they can be taken up by both the bloodstream and the lymphatics. Both the bloodstream and the lymphatics are involved, primarily the bloodstream, but this is a means for the digestive system to pass the nutrients to the liver. And the liver is one of your most important organs. It's probably in about third place behind your brain and your heart, your liver. So first of all, with absorption, only the smallest molecules can be taken up by both the circulatory system, your blood vessels, which of course would be capillaries, and also your lymphatics. You have lymph capillaries. If you think about your circulatory system, first thing you think of is your heart, which is the pump of the circulatory system, or the cardiovascular system. But then you have arteries branching down, smaller and smaller, and those become capillaries. And that's where all of the exchanges take place. So this takes place in the capillaries. Then the capillaries will branch bigger and bigger back into veins, and the veins return the blood to the heart to keep the circulation complete. So absorption, we have to break our molecules down into very small pieces, very small building blocks in order for them to pass from the small intestine into the capillaries of either the circulatory system or the lymphatic system. This is a means of what? Passing those nutrients onto the liver, so the liver can take them and use them as necessary, or if it's glucose, that will primarily remain in the blood, and then that glucose will be delivered throughout the body to all the cells. Remember, the cells have to have glucose for energy. This is done by each and every cell in your body. If you remember your high school biology, each cell has a nucleus with its DNA in it, and each cell also has numerous little organelles called mitochondria. And that's where these reactions take place, is in the mitochondria of every cell. Then transformation is the liver. The liver will take many of the digestive products, the amino acids, the glucose and other monosaccharides, the triglycerides, the fatty acids that your digestive system provides, and it will basically put those nutrients where they're needed. If we need protein synthesis, the liver will be doing protein synthesis. Or if we have too much glucose, what's the liver going to do? It's first going to turn it into glycogen, remember? And then transform it again into fats for storage. All right, so those are your three main metabolic processes. The next thing I want to do is talk about what are the organs of digestion, absorption, and transformation. I've mentioned them. Let's talk about them briefly. Basically, your organs involved are in two places. The gastrointestinal tract, or the digestive tract. A lot of times it's referred to as GI, gastrointestinal. Remember, we don't really call it the digestive system, we call it the gastrointestinal tract. Just like we don't really call the circulatory system by that name, we call it the cardiovascular, because it involves the heart and all the vessels. So the GI tract, of course, is the mouth. In the mouth, we have teeth and tongues, and we also have our salivary glands, which are located in our face and below our tongue and on the top of our necks. There's 6 of them, 2 pairs. We've got a couple up here, got some below the tongue, and so forth. In the mouth, what's the main process going on in the mouth? Mechanical digestion. Breaking down food substances into smaller pieces, not only so that we can swallow them, but also so that they're easier to process. If we have a large chunk of food, it's very difficult for the chemical reactions to break it down quickly because they don't have access to it. So the mouth, the teeth and the tongue are involved in mechanical digestion, but also we have the salivary glands that secrete an enzyme. There's an enzyme in your saliva. It's called amylase. And amylase starts the process of breaking down carbs. So we have our GI tract. First is the mouth, primarily mechanical digestion, but it also has the very beginnings of chemical digestion. Your saliva starts the breakdown of your complex carbohydrates and starches. So you do have an enzyme in the mouth. And so it's important that you chew your food, obviously, so you don't choke on it. In fact, that's not the primary reason. The primary reason is to get the food substances into small particles, so then they can be mixed and digested efficiently. The next organ, of course, in the GI tract is the pharynx, which is fancy for throat. This, of course, is simply the passageway. The passageway out of the mouth down to the esophagus. Maybe what I'll do is I will write this up higher so you can see it. We have the mouth, pharynx. Esophagus is a collapsible muscular tube going behind your trachea. Of course, your trachea goes to your lungs. It's your windpipe. But the esophagus is a collapsible muscular tube that is leading from the pharynx, the throat, down to the stomach. Okay? Let's fix this. The Y goes before the N. Pharynx. So the esophagus is a collapsible muscular tube from the pharynx, the back of the throat, to the stomach. And what's important here is we have muscle contractions that begin. It's called peristalsis. 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 I'm trouble with the spelling today. Peristalsis. Those are wave-like muscle contractions that literally push the food through the digestive system, not just in the esophagus, but all the way through. These are involuntary muscle contractions. You do not have control over your esophagus. Next, on the GI tract is the stomach. The stomach is a J-shaped pouch that stores and mixes food. Its main function is to store food, mix it with some additional enzymes, and then literally squirt it at small intervals into the small intestine. Small intestine cannot handle the volume of food that you eat all at one time, so the stomach stores food and mixes it with additional enzymes. By the time you swallow food to the stomach, it's now called chyme. Chyme is a mixture of saliva, digestive enzymes, water, and the food substances that you have eaten. So in the stomach, food substances are now called chyme. They're mixed and stored until they can be moved gradually into the small intestine. Like I said, the small intestine cannot handle the volume of food substances that you would eat all at once. So the stomach mixes and stores. What do you know about the stomach? Besides the food that you've swallowed and saliva and water and enzymes secreted into the stomach, what else does the stomach have? Most famous thing, yes, stomach acid is hydrochloric. So the stomach, we've got the chyme and we're going to be mixing it. We also have capital H, capital C, small l, HCl, hydrochloric acid. There's two purposes to the hydrochloric acid. So your stomach's going to be mixing what you just ate with water, enzymes, and hydrochloric acids, okay, into this substance that we call chyme. Hydrochloric acid has a low pH. Do you remember pH from high school biology or junior high science even? pH is a measurement of how acidic or basic a solution is. The lower the pH, the more acidic. 7 is neutral, and then the higher, the more basic. Okay, so hydrochloric acid has a low pH. This helps the enzymes to work. Chemical reactions have to take place under specific conditions, and these chemical reactions have to have the appropriate enzyme and the appropriate conditions, the appropriate pH. It also kills bacteria. There's a lot of bacteria on what you ingest, and it will be killed by the hydrochloric acid. Also in the stomach, very little digestion actually occurs here, but we have another enzyme, pepsin, and this is just going to start the digestion of protein. Pepsin is going to start the digestion of protein. Up here in the mouth, we have amylase. Amylase is going to start carb digestion. Both of these can be very complex molecules, so we're going to get started on our starches in the mouth with amylase. That is a digestive enzyme. Then we're going to start on the protein digestion in the stomach with pepsin. So the stomach, primary function, storing and mixing. Okay, once the food substance reaches the stomach, it's called chyme. And it's going to be mixed and stored until it can be put into the small intestine. Your stomach contains hydrochloric acid. Your stomach contains pepsin to start protein digestion. All right, so your stomach's going to mix what you just ate with water, with the amylase from the saliva, with pepsin from the stomach itself, and with hydrochloric acid. To make note with the stomach, very little digestion takes place here. It is not the primary organ, though it is the most prominent in our thinking. I say digestive system, everybody thinks stomach. Stomach is it's rather insignificant for digestion. However, another note, alcohol absorption. Alcohol is actually, the alcohol that people drink is ethanol, which is actually a small alcohol molecule. It's small enough that it can be absorbed by the stomach. It won't make it into the small intestines. It's already in small enough form. So alcohol will be absorbed quickly compared to other food substances. And alcohol, unfortunately, is a relatively small molecule. It'll be carried by the bloodstream from the stomach throughout the body. And of course, its main problem is at the brain. All right, so it's going to be absorbed directly by the stomach. The liver will detoxify it, but not before it's already started circulating. So that's another problem with alcohol. It's going to be absorbed quickly, and it's going to be absorbed directly into the bloodstream. It's going to bypass the liver. Now, as it's circulating through the body, it will go to the liver, and the liver will detoxify it. But what happens? What else is on the circulation path? Your brain, okay? And it is a small enough molecule that it can be uptaken by the brain and, of course, affect your cognitive functions of the brain. So alcohol is absorbed by the stomach. It can bypass most of the digestive system. It can go directly to the brain. It will eventually, as it circulates, be detoxified by the liver, but it doesn't go through the same processes as most of what you eat. Then the next stop on the digestive tract is where we're going to start most of our digestion, and that is the small intestine. The small intestine is the primary organ. It should get top billing, not the stomach. The small intestine is the primary organ of both digestion and absorption. Of course, the small intestine has 3 segments, and each segment plays a different role. The first 10 to 12 inches, by the way, in an adult after death, if you were to stretch out the small intestine, it averages about 20 feet long. Okay? So, but the first foot, 10 to 12 inches of the small intestine is the duodenum, spelled duodenum. The duodenum is the first foot, 10 to 12 inches or so, of the small intestine, and this is where digestion occurs. This is where digestion occurs. It gets started a little bit with your complex carbs in the mouth. It gets started a little bit in the stomach for your proteins, because both of those are very complex molecules. But pretty much most of the digestion occurs in the duodenum, the first 10 to 12 inches of the small intestine. And how many have heard of your pancreas? Pancreas is a gland that sits below the stomach, right next to the duodenum as it comes out of the stomach. And that is a very important gland. It secretes digestive enzymes, and it secretes the blood sugar hormones, okay, that control your blood sugar. Insulin is an example of one of those. So the pancreas then will secrete digestive enzymes into the duodenum, and this is where we're going to break our proteins all the way down to what? Where do proteins go? In the small intestine, we're going to break those proteins all the way down into, what is it? Amino acids, okay? And we're going to break down our carbohydrates into monosaccharides. Okay? And so in the duodenum, we're going to have a lot of digestion going on. We're going to take those main food substances and finalize the digestion all the way down to the smaller, much smaller molecules. Because what happens is we've got to be able to pass from the small intestine into the bloodstream through the capillaries. So we're talking small molecules. And that brings us to the next part of the small intestine. This is the jejunum. J-E-J, jejunum, U-N-U-M. This one is about, well, it's 2.5 meters, okay, long. If you multiply that by a little more than 3, this is going to be around 6 to 8 feet in length. And this is where the nutrients are absorbed. So duodenum is going to do your digestion. The jejunum is going to do the absorption in the small intestine. If we were to take a cross section of the small intestine, we would see the muscle, we'd see the outer layer of epithelial encasing it. Then we'd see inner muscular layer, okay, because the small intestine will have to push food substances called chyme through it. But then the inner layer, we have all these tiny, tiny, tiny projections. It would look something like this. Little finger-like projections. Okay, and then on each little finger-like projection into the lumen here, there's even smaller. We got two levels. We've got those little finger-like projections into the small intestine. Then each one of those has little tiny projections as well. Very efficient absorbing surface. These are called villi, each of these projections. And then we have the microvilli. So your small intestine was designed not only to digest the food, but it would look like a carpet almost. Okay, if you look at it under a microscope, it looks like a carpet. And then there's even the villi and the microvilli. This is because we have to have surface area for absorption. So the small intestine this multiplies the surface area. If our small intestine just looked like this, we'd have very little surface area. But look at how we increase our surface area with the villi and the microvilli. Because the small intestine has to absorb all of the nutrients that we've just broken down and digested. Then the last section is the ileum, I-L-E-U-M. This can be as long as 4 meters, okay, 12, 15 feet. And this finishes the absorption of the nutrients, and it also reabsorbs all the water. It's going to reabsorb the water that was used in the processing. Remember, what is water? It's the solvent of the body. All of these digestive processes have to occur in solution. Those enzymes and those food substances are dissolved in water so that the reactions can take place. And so then the rest of your small intestine and even into your large intestine, you'll have the reabsorption of water. So the small intestine. Next on the digestive tract or on the GI tract is the large intestine. This is divided into 3 main areas. It's commonly called the colon. This large intestine or the colon, you have the ascending colon. This kind of forms the border of your abdominal cavity. Your abdominal cavity, of course, contains your stomach and your liver, but also all of your digestive organs, your small intestine, and then your large intestine forming the border and encasing the outside of the small intestine. Large intestine actually is not very long in comparison, but it is wider in diameter. That's why it's called the large intestine. It's a matter of diameter. Also commonly called the colon. You have the ascending colon, then the transverse colon going across the top of the abdominal cavity, and then the descending colon. And this completes any water absorption. It also tends to contain what are called helpful bacteria. These are in the large intestine. And we've got a little bit of factors involved, clotting factors, and the production of a vitamin called vitamin K occurring here. So the large intestine, of course, then any undigested materials will be stored at the end of the digestive tract. So that's primarily the digestive tract that we're interested in: the mouth, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, and the large intestine. Then, besides the digestive tract itself, we have accessory organs. Accessory organs. The first and most important of those is the liver. The liver's not on the digestive tract, is it? But it's vital. The liver. Okay? The liver is your first accessory organ. It is the largest gland of the body, and it plays a vital role in your metabolism because it processes everything that you digested. The liver, largest gland of your body. Very vital organ. It is the most vital organ that we've talked about so far. It plays the most vital role in metabolism because it processes everything you've just digested and absorbed. It's the primary organ of transformation. The liver, in a sense, controls what happens to what you just ate. So the liver, not only is it the largest gland of the body, in fact, it's one of the largest organs, it plays the most vital role in your metabolism because it controls what happens to everything you just digested and absorbed. All right, so it has 5 primary functions with respect to, I can give you 6. We'll go with 6 primary functions. 5 of them are digestive and metabolic and catabolic and anabolic in particular, but the 6th one is for the immune system. So we'll go ahead and include it. The first function is your carbohydrate metabolism. Carbohydrate metabolism. Here's what it does. Let me get rid of all of this. Remember, metabolism is simply a way to say all the chemical reactions involved. I guess we'll get rid of cellular respiration, though that's kind of where it's heading. Carb metabolism. So it controls what happens to the carbohydrates that you ate. And what the liver will do, first of all, it'll take glucose and other monosaccharides. Remember, this is a building block, monosaccharide. If you eat starch, your digestive system is going to break it down into glucose. Okay? And so what your liver does with glucose, one of 2 things: it'll go to the bloodstream directly. It'll stay in the bloodstream because each and every cell has to have it. Each cell needs glucose for energy. In the cell, I mentioned the mitochondria. It's called an organelle, like a little tiny organ inside your little tiny cells. They all have numerous mitochondria, especially your muscle cells. Your muscle cells have a lot of mitochondria. Why do you think? Why do you think? Muscle cells have mitochondria. Why do they have a lot of them? Because they need a lot of energy, okay? They need a lot of energy. So the mitochondria inside each and every cell will do cellular respiration to produce energy. The energy needed for those cells to be alive, for the cells to function, for the cells to even exist. That is what happens with the glucose. But then in the liver, sometimes it has to be transformed. Okay? And this is done by the liver. So what the liver can do, it can take excess glucose and convert it, transform it, convert it into glycogen. Okay? That is your carbohydrate storage molecule, commonly referred to as animal starch. It's in different form than plant starch. But then, what else can your liver do? If there's too much glucose, and this is full, your liver can convert glucose into, here it is, adipose tissue, commonly known as body fat. Another thing that your liver will do as far as transformation goes, your liver is able to take non-carbohydrate nutrients and convert it into glucose if I need it. So this glucose is going to be transformed into glycogen and hopefully not adipose. But then my liver can take non-carbohydrates and convert it into glucose. Not glycose, glucose. Glucose if I need it. All of this is done by the liver. That's why I'm calling it carbohydrate metabolism. It's no longer catabolic, it's anabolic. I'm building molecules. I'm rearranging molecules. So carbohydrate metabolism takes place in your liver. Your liver is going to control what happens to your nutrients. Do you understand that? Whether it's carbohydrates or the liver will also control what happens to your amino acids. Amino acids are what kind? What the building block of what? Proteins. So our next function is protein metabolism. Protein metabolism. This involves amino acids. Remember, there's 20 different kinds. And each protein is very specific of which kind of amino acids in what sequence. So the liver is going to build needed proteins. So we're going to take amino acids and we're going to build needed proteins. What do we need proteins for? Just about everything. Enzymes are proteins, right? Your body structure is made up of proteins, okay? Proteins are vital. So your liver will build needed protein. Another thing the liver can do is it can interconvert. Remember, there's 20 different amino acids. Have you ever heard of tryptophan? That's an amino acid. Lysine, that's an amino acid. There's all kinds of them. There's 20 of them. And your liver is able to convert one amino acid into another. So let's say I'm building a certain protein and I don't have enough of the particular amino acid. My liver will interconvert it. Different amino acids. See how vital your liver is? It controls what happens to what you ate. Protein metabolism. I can take amino acids and build a protein that I need. Oh, I'm missing a certain amino acid. Well, I'll convert one into the one I need. That is your protein metabolism. One of the main proteins that your liver will manufacture is your blood proteins. Hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a very important blood protein. It carries oxygen throughout your blood, and it involves the protein hemoglobin, which has an iron component. Have you ever heard of anemia? Or how many have been told or heard of someone that they have iron poor blood and they have to take an iron supplement? Why is iron involved in some of your vitamins? Because your liver needs iron. It's a mineral that we need because it builds blood proteins. And those red blood cells that carry that oxygen, they only live about 120 days. So your body has to continually manufacture and recycle the raw materials to make new red blood cells. That's your liver. Vital organ. It controls what happens to what you ate. Then another mechanism, another function is lipids. Your lipid metabolism. So your liver controls the carbohydrates, the proteins, and your dietary lipids. It controls what happens to the nutrients in your body. So with your lipids, that involves your fatty acids. It's going to be able to assemble needed fatty acids so that it can interconvert them. Okay? We use FA, fatty acids. It can interconvert the different fatty acids. It can also synthesize needed fats. So I thought fats were bad, only the storage kind. You do need fat, okay? Lipids are important structural molecules as well, and there are numerous locations in your body that are normal structural fats. You have fat that cushions your heart. You have fat that cushions your eye sockets. Okay, so there are a lot of needed fats. Not all of them are storage. Okay? So our lipid metabolism can interconvert those fatty acids. And it can produce your needed fats. There are things called lipoproteins. That's where it's a macromolecule, a big molecule. It's made up of lipid and a protein. You need your lipoproteins. Then there's your phospholipids, another important structural molecule, because all of your cells have cell membranes and they're made of phospholipids. So lipid is not bad. Also your hormones. Most of your hormones are going to be a protein component and a cholesterol component. So you hear cholesterol, it's bad, or fat, it's bad, only in excess. Okay, it is a needed nutrient. Then of course your liver can also convert, as already mentioned. The liver can take proteins and turn it into adipose or carbs. So the liver does convert excess nutrients into fat storage. Then we have, besides these main metabolic processes, the liver has 3 more. So the liver, very vital organ. The fourth thing is it is actual a location of storage. We'll call it temporary storage. Your glycogen, which is your starch, will be stored in the liver itself. That's your first storage molecule. Then we also will store iron. Iron is necessary for the formation of hemoglobin as your body makes new red blood cells to keep your, so you don't have anemia. And then also it's vitamin storage. We'll finish up the vitamins before we have the test, but there are different kinds of vitamins. Some of them are water soluble, like vitamin C. They are not stored by the body. Other vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin D, they're fat soluble and they will be stored in your liver. Okay, how many of you like to eat liver? Okay, liver is a very nutritious part of an animal to eat. Why? It stores a lot of vitamins and iron. Okay, so that's why liver is a healthy meat option. I don't like it either. All right, so storage, then detox. I mentioned ethanol, though some desperate alcoholics, I'm sure, consume other types of alcohol. But anything chemical that you would ingest, including ethanol, can be altered by the liver so it is not going to harm body tissues. Detox. It alters the composition of toxic substance such as ethanol and other alcohols. And then the last function is it harbors macrophages. Where have you seen that cell name before? The liver has a lot of blood circulating through it because it's such a vital gland. And so the liver has resident macrophages that are involved in immunity. So, can you tell? You need your liver. It's probably the third most important organ of the entire body. That is the liver. Then the last thing besides the liver that is accessory are the salivary glands, located by your mouth, under your tongue, sides of your cheek, under here. How many have ever had the mumps? Some of that could be salivary gland swelling, not just your lymph nodes. And then the pancreas. The pancreas is a dual function gland. It secretes hormones and digestive enzymes, both. Another vital organ, which is why pancreatic cancer is such a severe form of cancer and usually terminal. It's a dual function gland. It secretes hormones and your digestive enzymes. Okay? That is the digestive system. So, what happens when you eat? 3 things that you're going to have to talk about in summary, or 4 things. What happens when you eat? 4 things. Digestion, assimilation, transformation. You know what? Let me do that over. Digestion, I'm sticking in assimilation. Back up. 4 things that happen. Assimilation, that's digestion and absorption. Number 2 is transformation by the liver. Number 3 is use. How does each body cell use what you just digested and absorbed and transformed? Then number 4 is storage. So what happens when you eat? The first thing that happens is assimilation. That's both digestion and absorption. The second thing that happens is transformation and synthesis by the liver. It's going to do what needs to be done with those nutrients. Then the third thing that happens is your body uses the nutrients. And the fourth thing that happens is storage. Excess will be transformed and stored as adipose tissue. Okay, and your body's going to accumulate it in various locations.